My story, told through a letter to my father. We are going no contact. While I had a few good memories with you growing up, the older I get, the more I think back on the past, and I see so many things that were wrong that I didn't pick up on because I was too young. Some I did recognize at the time, but I chose not to act on them because I felt I deserved it. I did not. These are things I've tried to look past throughout my life, but I just can't any longer. The first being when you would smack me in the mouth. I understand you did this when you believed that I had said something disrespectful, but a lot of those times was when I would speak up for myself when I felt I was being treated unfairly. To this day, I still have problems standing up for myself and communicating when my feelings are hurt, because many times that I would do so growing up around you, it would lead to either A, a fight, or B, a pop to the mouth. I distinctly remember one occasion where my sister and I had been in an argument and you broke it up, yelled at me, and then smacked me in the mouth so hard that you gave me a busted lip. Upon seeing this, your response was to very rudely say, "Yes, your lip is bleeding," and throw a Capri Sun at me, as though that would somehow make it better. This was one of the times that I thought I deserved it. I did not. I can recall another instance where you, my stepmom, and I were talking in your office about a movie my sister and I were watching in the other room. I told you both that I hadn't seen it, and I gave you a brief explanation of what it's about, based on what I'd gathered from trailers that I'd seen on TV. My stepmom then remarked, "You sure know a lot about this movie. Are you sure you haven't seen it before?" To which I replied yes, in an exasperated way. Looking back, I can understand it was a bit of a rude way of saying it, but at the time I didn't. You motioned for me to come over to you with your finger, and I did so happily, thinking that you were going to give me something or tell me something. Imagine my surprise when you smacked me in the mouth so hard that I fell to the floor, completely confused as to what I did wrong. Even my stepmom expressed concern that she didn't understand why you had just done that, and you, not taking your eyes off of me, said he knows why, even though I wouldn't until months later. I did not deserve this either. Another example is when my sister and I shared my old room when we were younger. My brother was in the room next to us, and this was during the time that he would constantly be getting out of bed at night. At one point, he got out of bed and he went upstairs. I went to grab him, and when I did, you told me to just leave him be the next time he did it. So I took my brother back downstairs and I relayed the message to my sister, and we both got back in our beds. Well, not too much longer after that, my brother got out of bed yet again, and despite me telling my sister what you had told me, she still went after him, grabbed him before he reached the stairs, and put him back in his room, leading him to cry. You came charging down the stairs to our room, marched up to me, took me by the back of my neck, and held me down on the bed as I was sitting cross-legged, essentially folding my body in half and causing me considerable pain, while screaming and cussing right in my ear about why didn't I listen, you told me to leave him alone, etc. Through my tears, I told you that I had told my sister what you had said, and she had ignored me. Following this, you proceeded to let go, and then do the same thing to my sister that you had done to me. When you'd finally screamed yourself out and left, my sister and I were still crying, and continued to do so until we fell asleep. Following one of our fights, the one that occurred after the incident where my dog bit my sister's friend because she kept aggravating him despite us telling her not to. I was told by my siblings that while I was in my room that I shared with my brothers having a panic attack, that you were downstairs yelling at my dog, and then physically kicked him down the stairs so that he tumbled head over heels down the entire set of wooden steps to the cement floor below. My point is this. It doesn't matter what your child has said or done. Physical violence towards that child is never, and I repeat, never, an answer. It causes the child to put up walls around you, be nervous and scared around you, and not want to talk to you. This is without mentioning the mental effects that this physical abuse does to a child. To this day, if somebody reaches towards my face, I still flinch. To this day, I cannot speak my mind and voice any grievances I have towards someone for fear of being yelled at or hit. Every time you hit me, I would be left wondering why you do this to me. Even then, I understood that it wasn't okay for you to be smacking me just for speaking out of line. But I never told anybody about it until recently, because I didn't want Mom to stop me from seeing you, because I still cared about you. Second is all of the unfair treatment towards me. Growing up, I would constantly notice how differently you would treat me as opposed to my siblings. Perhaps you didn't notice, but I certainly did. The biggest example of this I can remember was a Friday night one winter. We had all gone to some sort of winter festival of lights thing with my aunt, uncle, and cousins, and towards the end of the evening, when everyone was getting ready to go, my brother, cousin, and I approached you, and we asked if we could have a sleepover at their house that night, to which you said no, saying that you hardly ever got to see me anymore. While I was disappointed, I accepted this as it was true. This was around the time when I had started to come and see you less than I had before. However, almost immediately after we had asked, my sister and my other cousin approached you, asking the same thing that us boys had asked you, and you told them yes, without a second thought. When my brother and I began to protest, you told us to shut it and to watch our mouths, or we'd be having a conversation back home, implying the smacking us in the mouth thing that I've mentioned before. So we did. Another example of this is the fact that unless I had spent Christmas or my birthday at your house, I would receive no gifts for a majority of these occasions throughout my childhood. Do you understand how hurt that would make me feel, seeing my siblings being showered with gifts and having nothing to share in the fun and the happiness myself? It shouldn't matter whether I was there on the actual day of my birthday or Christmas. It would still have been fair to have at least gotten me something. And the few years you did get me a gift for Christmas, when I wasn't there, they were typically different versions of the same thing that you had gotten one of my siblings. Just like the year you got me and my sister the same camping set, just in different colors. To compare, whether I was at your house or hers for my birthday or for Christmas, Mom would still get me presents so that I wouldn't feel left out. To this day, even though she lives across the country in the South, she still mails me gifts, even ones for me to deliver to my aunt and my uncle and their son, and to Nana, as well as sending me regular care packages just because she can. Another instance of this is those few years that I didn't have a room to sleep in at your house, much less my very own bed. I was left with no choice but to sleep on the couch in the living room for years. And when you did finally buy me a bed, and I use that term loosely, as it was an incredibly uncomfortable futon rather than a bed, I was still not given my own bedroom, shared or otherwise. Instead, you put the futon in the communal room in the basement. One last instance is the fact that when I moved back home after college and stayed with you, you refused to give me or even allow me to make a house key while my sister had one. You justified this by saying that you didn't want me to have one, in case we had a falling out, and you kicked me out again. This was a blatant and obvious indication to me that you didn't trust me, and was incredibly insulting and humiliating, having to get somebody to open the door to let me in the house I lived in every night when I got home from work. And again, I could keep giving examples. Perhaps you didn't realize you were doing it. Perhaps you did. But regardless, it's an incredibly hurtful thing to do. I know that I'm a child from a previous marriage, and that I was an accident, and that my siblings are probably in a more important place in your heart than I am, because they're from your wife and I'm not. However, that shouldn't matter. And nothing about treating me so differently than my siblings is okay. Thirdly is the fights. I call them fights, but for the most part it's just you screaming at me and refusing to let me get a word in. There have been 3 occasions to my memory where we were screaming at each other, and you told me to get out of your house, or you'd be calling the cops to have me trespassed. What kind of a father does that? What kind of a father would call the cops on his own son to have him kicked off his property? There have only been 2 times in my entire life where I felt pure anger, absolute and near uncontrollable rage, to the point where I can't even think. My whole body is tense. I'm hyperventilating, and spit is flying from behind my bared teeth. And both instances have been because of you. When we fight, you try so hard to get me as angry as possible. You've thrown me insults about myself, about my mother, about my dog, about how I live my life in general. You've told me that you wish you could have been the one to raise me instead of Mom. You've told me how Mom raised me in all the wrong ways. You've told me how I did a horrible job raising and training my dog. You've compared me to your own sister, who ran out of the family before I was even born. You've gone so far as to say that the reason we don't get along is because I have too much of my mother in me. You've even gotten in my face on multiple occasions and dared me to punch you. Another thing that continues to stick with me on the subject of our fights is the 2 instances where you actually did force me to punch you in the face in the basement. One of which was in front of my brother and my cousin. Do you understand how scary it is, having your own father scream at you to hit him and refusing to stop, getting more and more violent with his words until you do so? It's not something I'm ever going to forget. And don't think I've forgotten about that night that you kicked me out of your house in the middle of the winter with no money, nowhere to go, and only the clothes on my back. This bears repeating. You threw your own son, your flesh and blood, out of your home with no money, no jacket, without his uniform for work the following day, and nowhere to go in November, the middle of the Midwest winter, which you, of all people, know can get incredibly harsh. When I brought up the fact that I had no money, as I had spent it all in a hotel room the previous night when you'd initially thrown me out, your response was, I don't care. Do what you did last night, knowing full well that I couldn't. The fact that you could have slept that night, while not knowing where I was. I had called Mom, and she had arranged for me to spend one night at Nana's, and no more, since she is on housing, completely astounds me, and shows me that you don't care about my well-being. This leads me to feel that if you don't care about my feelings, in my well-being, why should I care about yours? Fourth is the fact that you don't call me or tell me anything about what's going on with you, my stepmom, or my siblings. While I was growing up, and even today, one of the biggest things that you give me shit for is not calling you. Well, the phone works both ways. At any point, you could have picked up that phone and called me too. But guess what? You never did. Which led me to believe that you didn't care about the things happening in my life and only wanted to know the bare minimum about me. Even today, even though you've had 29 years to get to know me, I guarantee you that my girlfriend could tell a stranger more about me than you, and we've only been together for 3 months. You also would never tell me about anything happening in the family. When my sister was born with a broken heart and was in the ICU, you didn't tell me. I found out through a Facebook post that my cousin made. When that same sister had heart surgery to put a metal spider in her heart that could have very easily killed her, you didn't tell me. I learned about it from a Facebook post that my other sister made about it after the fact. When my great-grandpa died, you didn't tell me. I learned through a post my uncle, your brother, made on Facebook. When my other great-grandpa died, again, you said nothing, leaving me to learn about it again because my uncle posted about it. When my great-aunt got COVID, you didn't tell me. When it killed her, you didn't tell me. When I wouldn't find out about this one until literally months after the fact. After one of her friends made a post on her wall on Facebook about how much they miss her, which led me to scroll through her page and see what happened. I don't understand why you keep me in the dark about everything that happens, and I never will. And it was this last move that finally broke the camel's back. I can look past not telling me that you're moving within the state, but not telling me when you move everyone across the country, leaving me to find out about it when my sister posts about it to Instagram. Do you have any idea how infuriating it is learning about every major thing to happen in my family through a secondhand source and being caught completely off guard? It sucks and it hurts. I could keep on giving examples of these things, as well as others, but if I did, this letter would be the length of a novel. You've been this way my whole life. For almost 30 years, you've made me feel like an outcast in my own family. For almost 30 years, I've been the family black sheep, the pariah that everybody looks down on just for being who I am. You've never fully accepted any part of me that didn't line up with your ideal version of me in your head, and you never will. Don't try to say that you do, because you don't. I see the look of disappointment when I talk about things that I enjoy, from video games, the music I listen to, the movies I watch, the hobbies that I pursue. I understand that writing you this letter will make me exactly like your sister. But at this point, I don't care. You can think of me like her because maybe I am. You can think of me like my mother, and I'll take it as a compliment because I fear becoming like you. While I still want to continue my relationship with my siblings, aunts, uncles, Nana and Papa, and my cousins, you and I are done. Unless you do some serious work on yourself, and I see that you've changed and will actually start treating me fairly. But I'm not expecting you to, because you've had 30 years to do so, and you haven't. And even if you do, it'll take years, decades maybe, for me to ever trust and feel comfortable around you. I will not call you. Should you call me, I will not answer. I will not text you. Should you text me, I will not reply to it. I know that you'll forbid my siblings to speak with me as well, and that's what hurts the most. But I will do everything in my power to stay in their lives while staying out of yours. The past 2 years or so since we have talked has given me the time and space to think about this relationship that we have, and has made me realize everything you've done to me, and that I'm happier this way. Being involved in your adult child's life is a privilege, not a right. You have lost this privilege, and I cannot say for certain whether or not you will ever earn it back. I have tried and tried to look past all that you have done for almost 3 decades. I have. But I can no longer do this. I can no longer pursue a relationship with a man who hits me, screams at me, forces me to punch him, tells me nothing, wants to know nothing about me, forces me to do manual labor for him during the summers, like chopping a pile of branches from his crabapple tree covering the whole driveway with only a pair of branch shears. Don't think I forgot about that one. Or making me cut his grass with a pair of kitchen scissors because I missed spots the previous day. That summer alone could fill a whole other page. From the first time you made me punch you, to punishing me by not letting me see my mother when I was supposed to the grass, to the branches, and more. I have found a family that treats me better than you ever have, and I will be relying on them now. For my girlfriend, who in only 3 short months has done more to be there for me than you ever have, to my new stepfather, who actively makes it a point to be a part of my life as well as Mom's. You will not change, because your pride won't let you. You may not even believe that you've done all these things, but you did, and we're done. We may be related by the shared blood that runs in our veins, but you are not my father, and I am no longer your son. You have lost that privilege and that title. I am seriously considering legally changing my last name, because I feel disgraced having yours, and I no longer want that connection. In fact, I will be asking my stepfather to legally adopt me and allow me to take his last name. I hope you have a good rest of your life. Perhaps one day we'll speak again, but it will be as 2 men, not as father and son. That relationship can never be repaired. Should I feel in any way threatened or belittled or looked down on, I will have no issue breaking contact again. Get professional help, and maybe we can be acquaintances. But for the foreseeable future, this is goodbye.